pauper. Today again, a wealthy woman living in a world beyond my reach calls down on me, a mere commoner. This wasn't the relationship I had hoped for. I was suppressing my true self, dating her for the sake of my parents' company. My soul was wearing thin. My weary back was gently supported by a mentor who had been there for me. As time passed, an invitation to a reunion arrived. My name is Tim, and I'm just an ordinary college student living alone in New York. I have the kind of face people say you'd find at least one of in any family. Not particularly tall, but not short either. And unfortunately, not a particularly bright mind. The exam period is something I'd rather not remember. All-nighters, nodding off, textbooks covered in drool. The so-called best days of youth. My hometown is a peaceful rural area. My dad runs a small factory there. Small as it might be, it's still a business. He has a few employees, and technically, he's the president. Despite the economic downturn, we thankfully had steady work, built on long-standing trust with our suppliers. Among them, my dad was particularly close with the president of a certain company. They would often go fishing together. Coming home in the morning after night fishing, getting scolded by mom. But this client was a major player, to say the least, a giant in the industry. How such a big fish ended up friends with my small-town dad is beyond me, but they were really close. At that time, I was 19. So was the daughter of the client. That's when our parents got an idea. Why not have them meet, just once? Seems like parents' ideas don't change, no matter the era, and in my vulnerable position, I had no choice but to be dragged to meet this young lady. Her name was Sarah. Later on, I would come to deeply resent this setup by our parents. As I said before, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. My major in college is all about gaining the expertise I need to take over the family factory. The professors are strict, and the exams are tough. So, I lived a college life sparing no time for sleep, all for studying. In contrast, Sarah exuded the essence of a lady, both in her appearance and demeanor. Raised in a family where part-time jobs were unnecessary, she seemed unaware of the value of money, and her spending was quite extravagant. After meeting a few times, my dad seemed to see through Sarah's nature and advised, "Just keep it at a friendship level, she's quite a handful." Saying so, he patted me on the shoulder. "I have to clean up the mess you made by setting this up," I thought, feeling a bit irritated. I wasn't keen on any more tense dates with a lady not to my taste, but due to some twist of fate, Sarah took quite a liking to me. And somehow, we ended up at the same university. Yes, I couldn't avoid running into her on campus. If we happened to meet, I couldn't just ignore her, so I had to nod along with whatever she said. Eventually, Sarah's father, brimming with confidence, contacted my dad saying, "I think Sarah and Tim make a great pair, how about they try dating?" Dad said it was okay to refuse, but on the other side was a big-shot CEO doting on his daughter. Mixing business with personal matters is risky, and if our biggest client turns away, the factory's management could be in jeopardy. Despite my efforts to study hard for the future and take over the factory, it would all be meaningless if my actions caused it to falter. After much consideration, I reluctantly chose to date Sarah. Though we went on dates every weekend, I was not good at making witty conversation. And with a fixed allowance and little time for part-time jobs due to my heavy study load, I was always short on cash. Though I am the son of a factory president, I'm just the heir to a small-town factory. My view on money is no different from that of an ordinary household. For instance, I could barely afford to treat Sarah to her favorite restaurant for lunch, but dinner was out of the question. The places Sarah wanted to go to for dinner were always extravagantly expensive. She would never nod in agreement to my suggestions of family diners or chain restaurants. So I made it a point to wrap up our dates by early evening, without any fuss. Sarah seemed to be growing increasingly dissatisfied, but I pretended not to notice. And perhaps out of irritation, Sarah began to express her emotions more explosively. "What's with that outfit? You look so poor. Walk farther away from me. It's embarrassing. Huck, a discount coupon. It doesn't even save you $1 and you carry it around. Your stinginess is creepy." She didn't hide her disgust at all. Even if I didn't like the person, being constantly targeted with malice was exhausting. Oh, I have to meet Sarah again next weekend. Just thinking about it was depressing, and gradually I found it hard to concentrate on my studies. The one who noticed my state was Professor Johnson. Professor Johnson noticed how exhausted I was and reached out to hear my story. And as I spoke, my words came flouting out like a broken dam. Professor Johnson listened to the end without interrupting, nodding along. And then he said, "Tim, your life is your own. Your consideration for your parents is commendable, but they surely don't wish for your sacrifice. Even if they do, you should firmly refuse. There's no need to waste your limited time." It felt like a push on my back. I called my dad that day and explained the situation. "I don't want to date Sarah anymore." "Sorry about that. Don't worry about the factory. You can break off the relationship." Hearing Dad's words made me wish I had sought his advice sooner. I apologized, and he replied it wasn't my fault, which greatly relieved me. And then came the weekend. During the date, all I could think about was how to announce our breakup. But the situation resolved itself surprisingly smoothly. Like, "Are you really the president's son? You're too poor. Let's break up." I feel totally deceived. Incredibly, Sarah broke up with me. I struggled to keep a grin off my face and managed to say okay, and Sarah disappeared into the crowd without looking back. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, and in the best way possible. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in a while. Time flew by from then on. Fortunately, I graduated from university without having to repeat a year. I returned to the countryside and began learning the ropes of the business under Dad's guidance to take over the factory. Though I had grown up watching him work, being responsible was a whole new experience. Before I knew it, I was 30, working hard. While tipping back a can of beer after work, I suddenly remembered Professor Johnson. I wondered how he was doing now. He was truly a great mentor. I was always buried in studies trying to make up for what I lacked, and he said to me, "You're all wrong. Taking breaks and gaining life experience is also part of learning. If you don't relax a bit, you'll burn out." I recall him giving me that advice once. More than just teaching academics, he was a mentor who showed me the way in life, someone I could truly respect. Had Professor Johnson not encouraged me, had he not taught me how to take breaks, I might not be where I am today. I hope he's doing well, I thought sentimentally as I sipped my beer. And before I knew it, I was 40. Time seems to fly faster with each passing year. Man, I've turned into an old man before I knew it, I mused somberly as I checked the mail, only to spot a familiar name. Yes, Sarah, that distinguished young lady. With some trepidation, I opened the envelope to find an invitation to a reunion. It seems she fully leveraged her parents' resources to start her own business. She's planning to open a new restaurant and is hosting the reunion as a form of promotion. Alumni from all departments are invited, making it quite a grand affair, regardless of their major. Even for a small university, inviting the entire grade would mean a gathering of several hundred people. I wonder how large the restaurant must be. Part of me was curious to attend, but the sight of organizer Sarah Moore in bold letters revived past memories, and my interest in attending vanished instantly. But at the same time, it reminded me of someone else, so I decided to give a friend a call. "Hey, did you get this reunion invitation too?" "Yeah, I got it. Wasn't Sarah your ex-girlfriend?" What a trustworthy friend to remember such unnecessary details. "Forget about that. Do you remember Professor Johnson?" "Yeah, I see him occasionally through work. It seems he's also been invited to the reunion and mentioned he'd be attending." I acknowledged with an "Is that so?" followed by some inconsequential small talk before hanging up. I didn't want to see Sarah. But I did want to see Professor Johnson again. I want to express my gratitude for how he's shaped who I am today. After some thought, I decided to attend and marked the RSVP card accordingly before sending it back. On the day of the reunion, I dressed in a suit for the first time in ages and scanned a flashy venue. There were quite a few attendees, but I quickly found a person I was looking for. "Professor Johnson, it's been too long." "Ah, Tim, is it? Good to see you're doing well." Professor Johnson called me by my name before I could introduce myself. I was touched that he remembered me. Despite having so much I wanted to say and express, I was just so happy to see him that I almost cried. Professor Johnson had aged considerably, his back slightly bent, leaning on a cane. Yet his character seemed unchanged, still exuding a calm and kind aura. I lowered myself to match his eye level. "Professor Johnson, I'm so glad to see you. Who I am today is all thanks to you. You supported me when I was struggling with a relationship I didn't want. I've always been grateful for that. Please stay healthy," I said. "Wisdom comes with age." I only shared what any elder would say. "You've worked hard and become a fine adult," he responded. His words made me emotional. But before I could dwell on the sentiment, people started gathering around Professor Johnson. He's a man with many admirers. I figured there must be others here specifically to see Professor Johnson, so I shook his hand and stepped away. I was glad to have met him and express my gratitude in person. Attending today was truly worth it. But then, my mood took a sharp downturn. The last person I wanted to see, Sarah, was standing right in front of me. Still dressing as dull as ever. "What, are you carrying around bad luck?" She scrutinized me from head to toe, with the same old taunts as before. "It's my dad's suit. He passed down his favorite one to me. I like it, and it's really none of your business," I replied, trying to keep my tone calm, but such mild sarcasm was lost on Sarah. "A hand-me-down. Can't afford your own suit, or what? Don't tell me. Did you run the factory into the ground?" She sneered with a laugh through her nose. I was being completely mocked. Just as I was starting to get irritated. "Excuse me," a woman in her 20s said, greeting those around as she entered the venue. Approaching me, she mentioned, "It's about time to." Sarah, seeing this, frowned in confusion. "What, are you his girlfriend? Better give up on this old guy. He's too poor to even buy a suit." "Poor? Are you referring to President Upton here?" The woman tilting her head at Sarah's words was my subordinate. Hearing the word, president, Sarah's face momentarily contorted. Despite this, confident of her superiority, Sarah's barrage didn't cease. "So you did inherit that rundown town factory, but you're probably only making a middle-class salary, aren't you? Can't even afford a new suit." Sarah's attitude, always bold when belittling others. It hadn't changed at all over the years. Realizing President Moore was not just a doting parent but rather foolish, I sighed, considering any further interaction a waste of time, and was about to walk away when, seems like there's a bit of a misunderstanding here. Our President Upton being called poor. His personal assets have reached $5 billion. If you've read the financial news, you'd have come across Mr. Upton's name at least once. My spirited subordinate was confronting Sarah. The vigor of youth. As for Sarah, She was momentarily at a loss for words, shocked, but quickly recovered. $5 billion. That kind of lie is easy to see through. And who are you, anyway, just barging in here? I'm his secretary. My secretary said, smoothly running her hand through her long hair. It was well maintained and, well, she was quite beautiful. And unlike Sarah, she didn't have any laugh-line wrinkles. In a match between a desperately wrinkle-fighting Sarah and a young, beautiful woman like her, there was no competition. I don't think the asset value is a lie. I've been hearing about Tim's efforts even after graduation. Turning towards the voice, I saw Professor Johnson standing there with a gentle smile. Perhaps it's best if I, a neutral party, explain the situation, he said, then proceeded to clarify the commotion to the onlookers. Continuing as a trust-based business would offer no future to a small-town factory. There is value in products that only our company can make. That was what I believed as I devoted myself to product development. I strive to expand our market not only domestically but also internationally. Even when we started seeing some success, I didn't rest on the laurels of being the president's son but worked even harder, eventually creating hit products. Repeating this process over and over led to our growth into a globally recognized company. You really did work hard. As your former teacher, I'm quite proud of you, he said with a smile directed at me. Oh, and I'm not Mr. Upton's girlfriend. He actually has a fiancée who's currently abroad, right, Mr. Upton? I gave a wry smile in response to my secretary's comment. In truth, I've moved my base of life overseas. That's where I met my fiancée, and we're living together now. We're planning our wedding soon, but I made time in my schedule to come back because I really wanted to see Professor Johnson. If I had continued to suppress myself and stayed in a relationship with Sarah, I wouldn't have the happiness I have now. I would have become just a puppet as Sarah wished. The thought alone sent shivers down my spine. That's why I'm truly grateful to Professor Johnson. Professor Johnson, please take care until we meet again. I apologize, but I have work to attend to. Leaving Sarah behind stunned, I exited the venue. Later, somehow, Sarah managed to get my number and called. Hey, how about we catch up over dinner? Don't you think we could make it work this time? Her sugary voice made me shudder. I have to decline, as I'm engaged. I heard some yelling on the other end, but I firmly refused and turned off my phone. Rumor has it that despite its flashy appearance, Sarah's company is barely making any profit, and she's struggling financially. Furthermore, her personality has seemingly led to her still being single. It's said that she goes through breakups just as quickly as she starts relationships. Even her once doting father has cut off support in disillusionment. Sarah had been accumulating debts under his name without his knowledge. Enraged, her father disowned her, leaving her completely isolated. It seems only a matter of time before her current company collapses. Tim, who was that on the phone? Oh, it's nothing important, I replied with a smile, turning to my fiancée. She's someone precious who silently supported me even when the company was unstable. It took a while before things stabilized, but I was finally able to propose. They often say the worth of a person isn't measured by money, and my life is a testament to that. Moving forward, I plan to carefully discern who truly connects with me as a person and cherish those individuals. Starting with the beloved woman right in front of me,